One major period in economics is the Enlightenment. You had these massive shifts in the way people were living as they moved away from the feudal system, which was the popular way of living at the time, into more of a capitalist society. All these changes had effects on the economy. You had people like John Locke saying that every man, no matter what social class, had these natural rights, which was a brand new idea. You had people able to buy their own lands, which was an introduction in private property, which was a new idea at the time as well. You had the rise of joint stocks and companies. You had a growing market economy and a ton of other things that changed how our economy works. Starting with John Locke, he was born August 29th, 1632 in Brighton, in the United Kingdom. This man did it all: a philosopher, economist, and a physician, and probably some other things as well. This man was widely regarded as one of the most influential Enlightenment thinkers and commonly known as the father of libertism, saying that every person was born with the natural rights to life, liberty, and property. After the Enlightenment, you also had the first real example of private property available to everyone. Before, it was only the king who had land and everyone lived off it and in return paid him back with labor or another service, or common land that anyone could use. In the Enlightenment, it introduced a new idea where anyone could have their own private property. This started off things like the enclosure movement, where people started walling off and fencing large areas of land, saying it was theirs and kicking everyone else off. This particularly hurt smaller rural communities that relied on the previous common lands to survive, but these were now turned into private properties that they could no longer use and they were kicked off. Still, it also created a lot more economic freedom for everyone as they started to work for themselves instead of a king. It also allowed people to move a lot more between the different social classes. With more people having more economic freedom and money that they owned, there was an opportunity available. While each individual was not able to spend that much money, there were a lot more individuals that could spend money. So you had these rise of things called joint stock companies, which is a way for a bunch of less wealthy investors to pool their resources to help buy into a company or fund a project. Everyone got a share equal to the amount of money they put in, and they shared both profits and losses, making it a lot easier for people to get involved and a lot less risky. During this time, there was also a shift from working directly to support the king. You had guilds forming as their own companies, or whatever it would be during this time period, and they had only one goal: to make as much money as possible. These new companies, importantly, were viewed as legal entities that were separate from the workers, meaning that if the company did something bad, the company would suffer and not the employees themselves. Also during this time, you had the growth of this thing called the market economy. A market economy is basically where everyone is producing what they want and selling it at their own prices in hopes of making money to benefit them. It is how we view the capitalist system in modern day. This system doesn't seem to be regulated, though, at first glance. If everyone can set their own prices, how are you going to make sure that everyone can afford them, and not just the people with a ton of money? That is where the most important part of a working market economy comes into play: competition. Market economies work in that if you have two companies that make the same thing, then they will compete for lower prices or to improve goods and services to gain more profit. For example, let's say you have two companies in a market economy that produce soap. They sell basically the same thing for the same price, and if you recall from earlier, companies are out for one thing and one thing only, and that is profit. And if you have to share it with another company, this causes you to have a huge loss in profit. So this is where you start having competition. One of our hypothetical soap companies will either try to improve its product to make more people want to buy it, or sell it for cheaper so that more people will buy it because it's more affordable. These are the two most common things the company will do to increase interest in their company. And because of that, the products are always supposed to be improving, and with the companies best at meeting the customer's demand, rising to the top and gaining the most money, and the customers benefiting from constantly improving products. This is not always how it works, but in an ideal market economy, that is the solution you get. And with that, we've gone over all the things I wanted to talk about. We talked about John Locke and his opinions of every man's natural rights. We talked about the introduction of private property, the rise of joint stock and companies, and the growing market economy.
Oh yeah.